Hello everyone, welcome to our third event in the Building International Solidarity Movement series. You can watch the other ones on the Feminist Library YouTube channel if you'd like. We've had events before with activists from Poland, the UK and other countries, and we're going to have more of these events. So if you are from a country, if you're joining us from a country that is affected by those issues, by the rise of the far right and the attacks on the LGBT community, then please do get in touch and we would love to speak to you and find out more. In future events, we already have activists lined up from Lithuania and Armenia, but we would love to hear from other countries. It's such an important issue, and I think it's so important that we build this international solidarity movement because it's very much international. I'm Polish personally, and I live in London and work at the Feminist Library, but my activism is very much focused around Polish democracy, freedom, feminism, and queer solidarity, and we've been protesting around these issues specifically for over a year now because of the attacks, which have become much more vile and open, and unfortunately our government seems to condone them. So we have been in solidarity with activists attacked in Poland, most recently last Saturday outside the Polish embassy, and we were also attacked by people who were claiming that we were fascists. So the attacks are very much international. They're here as well. And that's why I believe that solidarity, international solidarity, is so important. But I'm not here to talk about myself, so I will hand over to our first speaker. Very much pleased to welcome Krisztina, Kolos, Orbán. I hope I'm not mispronouncing it too badly. Representing Transvanilla Transgender Association from Hungary, which does a lot of amazing work, and the petition should be coming up in your chat, so you get more information that you can look up later and have a look at ways of supporting them. So without further ado, Tina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Magda. I would like to welcome everyone. Yes, you pronounced my name almost perfectly. It's Tina Kolos Orbán. Yes, I share the name with our Prime Minister, but I know of no family relations to him. It's just we have the same name, which is nice, I believe. Although he's shame on us, but I can deal with that. So I'm representing today Transvanilla Transgender Association, which is the only registered organization in Hungary solely focusing on trans issues and gender identity and gender expression. This is the case, I think, all around in Eastern Europe, and in many other countries there is no even trans organization registered. But Transvanilla was one of the early birds. I think we have started around 2004 with developing a website, then organizing thematic meetings. And after 6 years in 2011, we finally established an organization because we felt that we need an organization that is advocating on trans issues, because the situation was not really awesome, although it was not that bad as in other countries in the region, and I will talk about that later. So we started as a very grassroots organization, everyone coming from the community, and we've been just enthusiastic about trans rights, and we wanted to make a better situation for ourselves. And in the past 9 years, Transvanilla very much became from this grassroots community building type of organization and advocacy type of organization. We are doing a lot of international advocacy because doing advocacy inside the country is almost impossible. So we obviously advocate on the national level, but that's very difficult. We also provide services to trans people. I mean, being the only trans organization, many people turn to us because they have nowhere else to turn. So we provide legal advice and legal assistance. We provide psychological help. During the pandemic, we provided food and hygienic products to those who has been in need for that. So we try to do as much as possible. And so as I said, we've been established in 2011, we've been registered in 2012, and basically we've been working and functioning with no financial resources until 2014, when we could start our very first project, which was funded by a funder. And we immediately started to advocate on legal gender recognition, because in Hungary there was a practice since 2004, and trans people with a mental health diagnosis, actually 2 of them, could change their legal gender in an administrative procedure. It was relatively quick and it really functioned rather friendly to trans people, but the issue was that it was not codified. So there was no legislation backing this up. It was possible because in the law on the registrars, there was a sentence that allowed the registrar to change the registered sex or gender, however you name it, of the person in the birth certificate. So this whole procedure started with the birth certificate change, which provided everything that was needed, and all the other documents could have changed. It was rather good and rather okay, but as time went by, things started slowly change. There were some issues with the procedure. Also, I mean, the whole global climate has changed and we wanted to have a better legislation, but first, we already had the same government. We wanted to secure the existing procedure. So we've been very strategic on this. We didn't go to the media. We didn't publicize what we wanted. We simply asked the government to legislate the existing procedure. And we did all the silent advocacy that was possible. And we felt that the authorities involved would like to solve the situation and would like to create better legislation, at least legislation. We teamed up with the Commissioner for Fundamental Rights of Hungary, who proved to be a great ally, and he published a thorough report on legislatory issues around legal gender recognition in 2016, when first time the government, as a reaction to that, saying that they are creating proper legislation, they stopped evaluating requests handed in. And that lasted for almost 18 months. Meanwhile, we turned to the European Court of Human Rights, but the government, when learned about the cases, they issued a ministerial decree, which made it possible again to change legal gender. So everything was amazing at the beginning of 2018. Procedures have restarted. We had a piece of legislation that was backing this up, so we felt it could work. Of course, the legislation was not perfect, and it turned out that we were right. After several months, they again stopped evaluating applications. And as I told you, we kind of always felt from the authorities involved that they would like to solve the issue. But after a while, we kind of felt that somehow it's blocked. And we've been afraid that it's blocked by the government on high levels. And that's what actually in 2020 turned out to be true. And I mean, it's part of a broader war against gender in Hungary that was scapegoating trans people this year. We don't have separate words for sex and gender in Hungarian, but they started to introduce gender, the English term, in Hungarian around 2016 in very negative discourses, only with negative connotations, like attacking it's not existing. The government has banned gender studies in the country, not just sent CU away, but they have banned the gender studies, and the government was constantly attacking the Istanbul Convention, which is a convention about protecting people from violence in their relationships, against domestic violence. Again, attacking that because of gender is used there. And like out of the blue, on 31st of March, the government has introduced a law proposal in Hungary saying that the sex that is registered in the birth certificate is a data that is registered at the time of birth and that cannot be changed anymore. And in practice, that means for trans people in Hungary that they cannot just change their birth certificates, but they cannot change their any documents. So basically those people who were not able to change their documents before, they cannot have a driving license with that name, they cannot be registered in the bank, they cannot go to school under that name, they cannot be employed under another name and gender. And in addition to that, we have closed name lists in Hungary for male and female persons, and the registered sex and the name has to match. So someone who is female has to choose a name from the female list. So the first name immediately reveals the gender of the person. So it's kind of, the government claims that it's not against trans people and we can live freely. That is real freedom, what we have now. They will just not register our gender identity, which we can freely have. But obviously it's impossible to have it when your first name immediately reveals that even though you look male or female, your name is different. So that leads to all kinds of discrimination and potential violence. And despite all the international pressure that we had put on the government with the help of other Hungarian groups and international groups, they still stick with this in the European Union, which is really sad. And we, at the moment, are legally challenging this piece of legislation, and people are getting their rejections for their 3 years ago suspended cases based on the new law. So, and as I said before, it's clearly part of the war on gender, and it's not about us as trans people. We are just minor side, I don't know, scapegoats in this, as they've been not talking against trans people whilst they were doing all this legislation. They said trans people can live freely and they can do whatever they want to. It's about biological sex, and that is kind of fixed at the moment of birth, and that cannot be changed. And I don't have to probably mention, but it has a severe effect on intersex infants at the moment. In Hungary, there is 30 days to register a birth, and in some cases, obviously, doctors cannot decide in 30 days. And now, if they register a sex for a baby, that will be registered forever, and there is no option to change that anymore, even if medical personnel say that should be the case. So I think that was me, and I'm happy to answer questions, and I'm looking forward to the other panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina. I'm so glad that you said about the fact that it's not just about transgender people. It's a cultural war on gender, and we have a similar situation at the moment with the attacks on the Istanbul Convention in Poland, and it's very much telling, because the language that is being used is that, you know, it's something that is being brought down upon Poland against our will, by the forces, by the Western corrupt forces, liberal forces, and we have to defend ourselves against the gender. You know, all of a sudden it's becoming a problem, and it's very much international, and that's why we're having these conversations and making these connections, so that you know, we can build solidarity around the connections. Okay, so I'm not going to say much more at this point. Valentina is our next speaker. Valentina Likoshva, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it again, is representing the Moscow Community Center for LGBT initiatives, and they do a lot of amazing work. It's a safe space, place that provides help and support for LGBTQ plus people. They also organize events and groups, and I'm sure a lot more, which Valentina is going to tell us about. The floor is yours, Valentina.
Thank you. First of all, I'm happy to be here, and I'm proud to be here with all activists who are joining this meeting panel. My name is Valentina. My pronouns she or her, and it's quite a difficult, because I don't know. Should I start with my experience or with the general situation? But I'm sure that many people know at least a little bit about Russia and the situation in Russia. I started my activism in the northwest of Russia, and this is one of the, if it's possible to say, safest place in Russia. because Russia is so huge, and the situation with LGBT rights in different places quite different. In the northwest, we are close to Norway, Finland, and Europe. That's why I think people who are living there are more flexible and more close to Europe. And of course, if we'll talk about North Caucasus or east of Russia, then the situation for my colleagues quite different. Yeah, I worked in the north till 2018, and I think that one event is quite good illustrate the international solidarity. This is a Parents' Pride. Maybe someone hear about this. This is a pride on the border between Norway and Russia. And from 2017, we start to create this place for all people who are living in the north of Norway and north of Russia. And I think it's a good place where you can see how we can support each other and how we can learn more from each other. Yeah, and if we will talk about Moscow Community Center, I think this is a unique place, I strongly believe, because as you know that Moscow, it's a capital of Russia. This is a huge city, and before 2015, there were no place where people can meet with each other, where they can create some projects or events. And the idea was from the beginning that we will create some just safe place for people to meet. But unfortunately, as we expect, I think that the situation now worse in Russia. And one of example, this is a new law. And I think in this autumn, our parliament will accept this law, which try to provide or support traditional values. Unfortunately, the victims of this law will be transgender people and also LGBT families. Now we try to organize campaign against this law, but we are not so optimistic about the results because we are quite weak. And now only one LGBT organization work officially. We all don't have official register in Russia, and it's impossible to register LGBT organization in Russia. But I hope that we will do something. At least we can give more attention for this law and how this law will destroy our lives. Yeah, we have also in Moscow unique shelter for LGBT people. It's just for 15 beds. I mean, just 15 people can stay in this shelter, and this shelter only one which work for LGBT people in all Russia. We in this shelter we try to help not only for our citizens but also for LGBT migrants, and especially from people who came from post-Soviet Asian countries like Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and this is quite a difficult issue for us because we still cannot find a way how to help them because many of them stay in Russia illegal. And unfortunately, many of them deport back. Even our government know that they will be in the prison, or if they have quite a huge risk to be killed. Yeah, Moscow Community Center worked also in 2017, and I think this is what everybody knew was crisis in Chechen Republic. Let's say crisis. But at the same time, we try to focus not only on Chechen Republic, but on all North Caucasus, and especially we try to help for and work with activists and volunteers in North Caucasus who are trying to support or protect lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people in North Caucasus and other republics. Yeah, I'm also ready to answer for your questions. I don't know what will be interesting, but I will be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valentina. It's so great to also hear about the connections between with the Pride between Norway and Russia. Another international connection which I didn't even make link of before this session. So I'm glad you mentioned it, and I hope that people will ask questions about it because I'm interested to hear more. So our third speaker is Matthias Vasik from All Out. And Matthias is going to tell us about their many amazing international campaign, but mainly I believe about their current campaign supporting Poland. I don't know how many other ones you can squeeze in within 10 minutes, but I'm sure we'll have time within the Q&A for more. Okay, take it away, Matthias.
Thank you so much, Magda, and thank you so much for having me. And it's really a great honor to be here with Valentina and Tina, who All Out has worked with both organizations. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Yeah, my name is Matthias. I'm the program director at All Out. We are a global LGBT plus rights group. My pronouns are he and him. That's what I should mention as well. And I lead All Out's overall global campaigning work. I'm originally from Poland, but I'm based in the United States since 2015. So I tell a little bit about All Out for those of you who don't know the organization. We call ourselves a global movement for love and equality. We work with thousands of members really all around the world with the idea, with the goal to build a world where no person will have to sacrifice their family or freedom or safety or dignity because of who they are or who they love. We do this through a variety of tactics like online petitions, crowdfunding campaigns, or trainings for young activists. And we have a platform that was launched recently where anyone can start a petition for LGBT plus rights. We work very closely with activists and groups on the ground. And this is really very crucial for our work because, you know, local activists help us understand what is happening, and they can use All Out as a platform to amplify local voices to a global audience. So we're kind of trying to connect these local voices with the international audience. And as I mentioned, we actually have run campaigns both with Valentina's and with Tina's organization regarding the case of Yulia Tsvetkova, a Russian LGBT plus activist who was charged with violating the Russian gay propaganda law for drawing pictures of rainbow families and other inclusive motives. And we have a campaign, or Tina has themselves started a petition regarding legal gender recognition for trans and intersex people in Hungary. So yeah, Magda, as you mentioned, I would like to talk a little bit about Poland because that has been quite a focus for us over the last year or so. As many listeners will be aware of, since 2019, really early in 2019, there have been increasing attacks on the Polish LGBT plus community. A few events that really marked that development have been the attacks on the Pride March in Białystok last year, where right-wing thugs and hooligans attacked peaceful marchers, and those images went around the world and created an outcry. That was kind of accompanied by a campaign that municipalities all over Poland were having, where towns and municipalities in Poland declared themselves basically LGBT-free zones. So they signed a catalog of commitments where they basically said, well, we call LGBT plus people an ideology. We don't want this here. And what it really created is an environment that is extremely hostile for Polish LGBT plus people, where we have seen increasing numbers of attacks, verbal and also physical attacks, that have led to a very, sad and development over the last few months. we have seen an increasing development around this in this year, a few months ago in June, during the presidential elections, when the Polish right picked again the LGBT plus community as their main enemy and scapegoat. Andrzej Duda, the president, made big news ahead of the elections when he pledged to, as he said, defend children from LGBT ideology. He launched something called the Family Charter, where he included prohibiting the propagation of LGBT ideology in schools. This family charter resembles very much the so-called pro-family charter that ultra-conservative groups in Poland have adopted across Poland in these LGBT-free zones. Duda also made this, incredibly ridiculous comment where he called as he calls it, the LGBT ideology worse than communism. And one of his campaign staff even said that these people are not equal to normal people. So we see, like, this increasing attack on LGBT plus people in verbal form, and this really leads to so many attacks that we see across the country. We have since the election seen a lot of protests. Very recently, most of you would have seen the images going around the world, protests by LGBT plus activists in Warsaw, including a really massive one where several thousand people demanded the release of an activist who was accused of hanging rainbow banners over statues and damaging an anti-abortion campaign van. What these events really show is that the government continues cracking down on the LGBT plus community, that it wasn't just a tactic to get their president reelected. The attacks that we've seen, the police brutality that we've seen is outrageous. But I believe it's really just the tip of the iceberg. It's so much deeper, as we have seen. This is so deeply entrenched in the political narrative of the government, of leaders of the Catholic Church and other right-wing groups, that this development will not easily stop, and the problem will not go away easily. So maybe leading, from that to what has been done. First of all, I want to say that the Polish community, the movement, has been incredibly strong and bold. And I feel personally like it has strengthened over the last year. You could really see how people have been getting together, have been campaigning together. There has also been some support from opposition politicians, from lawyers who have offered their help pro bono. So not everything is bleak. And I think it's important to see that there is resistance and there is solidarity coming. So what did All Out contribute to that? So we teamed up with Polish groups last year when those attacks in Białystok occurred. We have been working with Kampania Przeciw Homofobii, Campaign Against Homophobia, a leading Polish LGBT plus group, and Lambda Warsaw, in creating a global campaign asking the European Commission to condemn the violence and discrimination in Poland. This has been a campaign that has been getting a lot of attention. More than 300,000 people have signed so far, making this one of our biggest campaigns over the last few years. We have recently this year launched a new campaign where we ask partner cities of the so-called LGBT-free zones around the world to convince their Polish twins to respect LGBT plus rights. This is another tactic that we're trying to have an impact on the local level. And then we're also supporting the community in Poland in other ways. We, for example, ran a crowdfunding campaign with a project in Krakow called Domek, which is run by local activists in the second largest city in Poland. They dedicate this project to LGBT plus people, where they offer community building, free legal aid, psychological support, and other things. And the center was running out of funds, and the All Out members helped them to keep their doors open, which was especially important during the beginning of the coronavirus crisis. So this is really in a nutshell what we have tried to do to create awareness and to continue, getting public attention on what's happening in Poland. I think this is really key, and something that I hear a lot when I speak to Polish activists. As much as they are fighting back and they are very creative and they are bold and they're getting a lot of solidarity, international solidarity plays a key role in making sure that none of us around the world, wherever we live, forgets about what's happening, because this fight continues. Even if the news cycle might move on, this really continues. So how do we keep up the solidarity and the support? I think this is really crucial. European governments play a key role since Poland is a member of the European Union. We all citizens of the European Union should try and urge their own government to reach out to the Polish government and ask them to respect the principle of tolerance and non-discrimination that they have committed to really when they joined the European Union. We can show solidarity by asking our governments to speak up. We can organize, we can join protests. There have been protests in London, in Berlin, and other places last weekend, actually. And, by really trying to listen to activists in Poland and amplifying their message and make sure that the world keeps close attention to what is happening there. I'm happy to answer any questions and talk more about this or other campaigns that we've worked on. But yeah, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Matthias, and thank you for ending on this powerful note about call to action. It's so necessary. And so my first question before we open up to the other attendees is, I guess you've already kind of answered it, Matthias, but I'm sure you'll have other wonderful ideas to add based on your work. How can we build international solidarity? How can we build this movement? Maybe start in the same order as we were going. So Tina first.
I don't really know the answer, but I know in practice that when the LGBTQIA plus, however you name, population is under attack in any of the countries, if you just talk about it, if you just ask them how they feel, that means a lot. And I think it's very important that we look around us and we don't just focus on our local situations, but we care about others, because we know what it's like to be attacked. And it's important to reach out to each other. I think these type of events that we are attending now are very important, because we can share our experiences, we can exchange ideas, we can get to know each other. It's very important. And I can tell you that we wouldn't survive without international solidarity in the situation that we were in, because we were surprised, we were not used to that. But then we got so much support from other organizations in other countries, and the support from all out was really amazing. So that's how we can start building it, and that's how we can work together and fighting against what is used against all of us, because it's the same thing. So we have to listen to each other, and we have to get to find out things together. I believe that's how we can build up ourselves.
Thank you so much, Valentina.
Yeah, I almost have a small plan, but to be honest, I think that first of all, I believe that we should remember about our privileges, including me and all activists and everybody around. It will be very good that if we will know more about each other, in any way. I mean, we could be friends on Facebook, and maybe it could be enough to ask each other, how are you and what's going on in your country? What kind of situation do you have? What kind of risk do you have? Do you need some help? Because time to time, even if someone will put like and share with my post, it will be enough for me, because we have usually very shrink space for our voices. We can create a lot of researches or reports, but if no one will not read it, then it's no sense to do this. It's not sense to collect information, to documentate some cases. And for us, it's very important. I think that it's a good example when many activists or organizations could join our campaigns, because I feel time to time that I'm so weak here, and if someone will join, if someone will tell our stories, if someone will support me, it will I will really appreciate it, and I think it's a huge value for me. I stop to think that I'm alone in this war. And also it will be good with I'm thinking with the small steps. It will be good if we will visit our events together, maybe small prides like Biden's Pride, or small seminars or conferences. Even if we think that it's not so huge, it will not have some effect, but it will. And I think it's a good if we will have opportunity to visit each other. Even if you will come to Moscow Community Center, we can tell what we are doing, you will know more, and maybe you will have some ideas how to support us, and we will have ideas how to support you. I think it could be, we can start with small steps and to see what kind of result we will receive.
Absolutely. Every act of solidarity matters, I think. It's really important to remember. It really does matter. We had this feeling when we were starting out, 2016, the attacks on women's rights to choose in Poland. We were starting to support from here, from London, creating international solidarity around these issues, and we felt after a while, burnout hit, and we kind of felt, what's the point of us doing it here? But then we got plenty of messages from Poland saying that it makes a difference. They really feel it makes a difference to them. So we continue. As much as our protest might feel small here, every little bit helps. Matthias, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, not much, because Valentina and Tina really, was spot on, I think. But I really liked what Tina said about caring about others, reaching out, in solidarity. And I also like what Valentina said about stories, trying to listen to those local stories, and then trying to amplify those stories by sharing them to people who might not have access to them, right? Like, we are talking about these things when we talk to activists on the ground, but I don't know, like, my friends, my family members don't have that access. So I can use my channels to share those stories with them. And I feel like, that's really an important part of the work that we do. Those personal stories really illustrate what the situation is. We often hear about this law, this is happening, or this kind of political process that is happening. But behind these things are, are people who are suffering or who are going through hardships because of what is happening in their countries. And and putting those stories to the forefront, I think, is really key to getting a lot of people behind those causes. Then obviously, we have we have an incredible power in our hands by using the digital tools that we've achieved over the last 2 decades, and the internet. And this shows really, especially in times of Corona right now, where we can't get together in person, where we can't join events in person. Many of us can't, at least. So we can get together as we are right now, or we can sign petitions, or we can send emails, WhatsApp messages, and so on. I think there's a lot we can do that gives us a lot of power, and a lot of people are using that. It's really great to see that. And also just using the networks that we already have, and engaging with people who have huge networks. I could give you one example. We have been working with Antoni Porowski, who's an actor who stars in Queer Eye, a Netflix show. He has been really engaged with what's happening in Poland, and he helped us get the word out about our campaigns, and use his networks to get more people aware of the situation in Poland. And I think all of these tactics together create a really powerful, can create a pretty powerful momentum. But one thing that I would add, and I said it before, is to not stop the attention at some point, because there's so much going on in the world, and we all know that the news cycle just moves on every few days. But these things continue. So for us in our work, it's very important to check in with people on the ground. What is happening? Like, is this over, or is there anything else that we can help you with? And usually these things don't go away very quickly, and there's a longer fights that we're fighting.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I would like to, there's a question in the Q&A box. Also, as someone who can't attend protests right now due to medical issues within my household, what would be a good way to show my solidarity and help out? And also, Jordan earlier asked something about how do you do your petitions, which I guess is specifically to Matthias. I always feel very disillusioned towards them in the UK. And I've already kind of answered it from a personal perspective, because we've had a petition a few years back which has helped us save the feminist library. So I do believe that they can work, even though there's so many of them. There's no way that they all work, but I do believe they have a point. So Matthias, do you want to take that one, and then we'll move on to the open question to everyone? How can people support from home?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about this a lot, about how effective petitions are in fighting these fights. And the way I see it is that, it's to be honest, quite surprising how often there are victories that have started from a petition. And the way I would see it is that a petition can be a way for people to engage with an issue, to do the first thing, to do a first step, to show that they are interested and that they are supportive of what's going on, to join a group of people who are on the same page. But it shouldn't stop there, right? Like, ideally, this is the first thing you do in a number of things that you do, that you continue doing. And the next thing you could do to help, and that's something that you could actually do from home without leaving home, is you could share the news on social media, and that already helps your friends to find out about what's happening. That you shouldn't underestimate the effect that has, because more people are aware of it, more people start talking about it and spreading it to their networks. And when a certain level of engagement is reached, let's say a certain amount of petition signers, a certain people sharing this on social media, it gets to the attention of people who are decision makers, right? And once they realize, oh, this is something that my constituency is talking about, I need to pay attention to this. Apparently what is happening in Hungary or in Russia or in Poland or other countries is something that my voters are concerned about, that people in my country are concerned about. So I should have a position about this. So I should talk about this with the embassy, or I should talk about this during a governmental meeting. So there are effects that these things have that are really, really interesting. So I would argue that petitions can be incredibly powerful. They shouldn't be the only thing you do. So think about, what else can you do? Can you join a local protest? Can you share this on social media? Can you write a letter to your government? Try to do other things and try to be creative.
May I also add to this, Magda? Because I think our experience with petitions is very interesting, because Transvanilla was not really visible and not the type of organization that would have launched a petition anytime. And we've been very skeptical about petitions, like they would do nothing in Hungary and it makes no sense to start petitions. And then when this law proposal was handed into Parliament, we just got a lot of requests and questions from people. How can they help us? And one idea obviously was to set up a petition, and All Out was a great help for us in launching that. So they didn't require too much of an energy from us to launch it. And when the numbers started to grow, we've been like really overwhelmed, and we've been just so happy to see that. So if that would have been the only effect, that would have already worth it, I can tell you. But that was not just it. We did all that international campaign that helped us to get into media. And at one of the panels, an Italian person told me that their grandmother knows about what is going on in Hungary. So we must be doing something really well. So that really helped us to raise the issue. I believe that played a huge role in that, and it got to people what is happening in Hungary, and we could explain what is actually happening. So it's not just a law, it's tearing people's life apart. And after the law was passed, we immediately launched another petition, and we had a much higher goal now. And now we believe that we can get the attention of the European Commission on that, because they have to listen to petitions and they have to listen to numbers, as Matthias have said. So I was really skeptic. I was like, it will not help us in any way. But sometimes, I mean, when I see the numbers growing, I'm like feeling really supported, and that's already a great effect, I believe. But there are also other added elements to that, so they can help a lot, I can tell you.
I can say that what I see several ways, and as you know, we are not quite. It is not possible to use protests in Russia. That's why we try to be very flexible, and based on this experience, I can say that in the closest future, in the end of September, it will be, and in October also, it will be 2 events that you can join online, Budden's Pride and also Open Art in Moscow. And we try to organize these events in the internet. Then you can just join. And also, I believe that all of us have unique experience. And it will be very good if you will have some maybe ideas or some view that you can share with us, how to do our work better. And we are very open to listen to you. And I think this is a way how you can join this process also. And I believe that many activists will be happy. We usually are very happy to receive some feedback or to discuss some ideas. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And I think the point of, you know, the unexpected outcomes of petitions is very much something that we have also seen. You know, the reason that we have connected with Matthias, for example, is because on one of the other events that I joined recently, we have found out about the To Poland with Love petition. And we thought this might be an opportunity for us to collaborate, and that's how we've connected. So all of these things can happen because of petitions. So even if a petition doesn't work, it might create something completely unexpected. It might create a new campaign or a new connection. And there are so many things that you can do from home. I mean, I have created, since the lockdown started, I have created approximately 50 banners because that's what I do when I sit in webinars and just listen rather than just smoking, chain smoking. I'd rather paint a banner, keep my hands busy. So, and then I post them online. You know, you never know where your post my reach. I just read something at a protest that we had on Saturday outside the Polish embassy. I just read something that I found on Instagram and I found really beautiful. And instead of having my own speech, I just read it, and it came from Berlin, from a person that I don't even know. I just thought it was so beautiful. I'm not going to read the whole message. I'll just read the end of it to you so that you know what I'm talking about. So this person says, "This is a historical moment. For us, this is Polish Stonewall. This changes us. This makes our community stronger. It made me stand up and speak in front of a crowd. I am not alone, and many of us felt the urge to be active for the LGBT rights for the first time this summer. President of Poland, Peace, Morawiecki," this is where she tags in those people, "you wanted to fight us and erase our community, but instead you started a chain reaction that will lead to the fall of your government." So yeah, I'm getting teary just reading it again. So yeah, there are so many things that people can do. I just wonder if any of you have any other comments about what other things people can do when they can't leave their house. I mean, you've already said a lot, but maybe just to go back to the question to make sure that we've covered everything.
Yeah, I could add one thing. It's not just about providing support to people in other countries. Maybe you can, I mean, you are speaking English, that's already a great thing. You can find people online who are alone, who need to talk to someone. They might be your neighbor or living 2 cities away or whatever. And if you just talk to one LGBT person who is feeling bad that day, and you kind of show them some support, that can mean a life for them. So there are so many small things that you can do even from home, like sharing, talking to people, attending events, that can be really helpful. And if you are a great person and you talk to your relatives and to others, that can be enough. If everyone would be like that, it would be a beautiful world for us, but that's just not the case. So just don't kind of have expectations towards yourself which are just not really for fulfillment. Just be yourself and be nice to those around you, and that can be enough. And yeah, sign petitions and do whatever you can.
I think maybe one more thing that I would add is also you know, educate yourself. That is something that you can do with your time, especially when you are in lockdown at the moment, or you know, you can't move around a lot. This is something that has been very important, I think, for a lot of people here in the United States during the racial justice protests over the last few months, where, you know, great recommendations were made by activists, by what kind of books should I read, by what kind of documentaries should I watch to understand more, to educate myself about the history of the issue, right? There are papers, there are so many resources that we have access to without even, you know, for free, literally on the internet, where we can learn about the history of the LGBT community in our countries, or about specific issues, or about, you know, what is happening in politics. Sometimes we only see the surface of what is really happening when we read the news, but if you have the time, dig a little bit deeper, and by educating yourself, you will have a better understanding, and you'll be able to, as Tina said, connect with others and explain the situation to them. And I think that can also be powerful and a good way of using your time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Valentina, did you want to add anything on that?
Yes, I'm thinking now that we very often have some kind of image of LGBT activists, like some fighters with flags, including in all protests. But I also now think that there are a lot of people who are not so visible, but who are doing a so great job. And we very often don't talk about them because some people can made some amazing post and to touch so many people with the information that for me will be so difficult to explain. And also I think that we can fight very often because of people who are near, who can support us. And this is maybe more important for our community. Of course, we're proud of our heroes, but at the same time, our heroes, they're around us. This is the people who support us. This is the people who can, when I'm totally down, to tell me that you're okay, you are doing good things. And yeah, now I want to say thank you for all of them who are ready to support us.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you for that. I don't have any more questions in the Q&A at the moment, so please post your questions if you've got any. But I can see that we have Jarek joining us from Polish Rainbow. So I just wanted to say if Jarek wanted to say a few words about what we've been getting up to here in terms of UK solidarity. Jarek, do you want to unmute yourself? Say a few words about the international solidarity in the UK.
than it is.
Oh,
Hello.
hi.
Hi, Yannick.
I wasn't expecting to be called out, but hey.
Sorry.
I'm not gonna show my picture because I'm like in my very much homey mode. So, I mean, speaking of the solidarity, especially from the UK point of view, I think many of you said already that, and you quoted what the person from Berlin wrote. I like this. There's an amazing snowball effect of different people organize themselves in like local communities. Today we had an event in Bristol. You know, lots of British people organize events for. I mean, today we had another event, I think, outside the embassy. So the fight continues, and for me the most amazing thing is people want to know, and I'm glad we're here to tell the stories of Polish resistance. And I think I remember a few years, a year ago actually, when we were doing placards for one of the demos with Dan Glass. He made a placard which said, "You messed with the wrong faggot." And for me, the Polish government messed with the wrong crowd. They messed with the wrong community. They've they thought that they can push us back, put us back to closets, but in fact, it's a like avalanche of protest support from all over the world. You know, we're trying to, as a Polish Rainbow, we're trying to keep track of those, and we've seen protests in Norway, in Mexico. So it's not even, it's an international movement. But in the UK, I think we already had at least 6-7 different events all over the UK, and people in Edinburgh are doing an amazing job. People in Manchester, had people in Glasgow. I know that Edinburgh is doing another event, I think this Thursday. So it's really important to keep it going until we're not free, we're not equal, until everyone is equal and there is international equality. And that solidarity gives us, I think we've seen it at the protest on Saturday in London, that all this gives us wings, gives us energy to carry on, to support lots of new people, lots of young people, lots of people who's never been to a protest join those events. So I think this is something which is super important to carry on. And I'm not sure if I should reveal our future project we'll start working on, and later this month. But a few months ago, we, in one of the webinars you organized, we came up with the idea of physically supporting Polish communities, which means that we will organize a bus tour to Poland to make Poland gay again. And we've just been putting links and kind of trying to test the waters, but we already have such an amazing response from the UK organizations, from LGBT groups, from politicians, from even I know that people in Berlin want to do solidarity buses to join Polish prides. So I think the time is now. We live in a very interesting times, and the solidarity is our weapon, as we chant "Solidarność naszą bronią" in Polish. So it's absolutely amazing. We're getting, and I think one of the factors which also shows how powerful we are is, for, at least in my experience, for the first time we had counter protesters last Saturday. So we're visible, and it's there will be a pushback because we're loud, we're proud, we will not be silenced. But the pushback tells us we're doing something right. So I think that's is there anything I should talk about a little bit more? Just ask me some questions. But I think it's amazing to see a support and solidarity across the borders, especially Eastern Europe, like places like Poland, Hungary, Lithuania, Russia. They need our support more than ever, and some of us came here to the UK, and our lives are a little bit more comfortable here, but we shall never forget. We shall never forget that there are places when being gay is dangerous. Being gay is punishable. Today I've learned that Polish right-wing organizations want to introduce the bill to parliament to ban any non-traditional family protests, which is and the idea of this was even 10-15 years ago, the idea of that in Poland was absolutely impossible. Now we're having a real struggle that there's this pushback of those of very well organized groups who are trying to dominate the discourse. I want to add one more thing. About what's happened on Saturday comparing to what's happening in Poland. In the UK, people who are shouting homophobic abuse and making statements against human rights are being arrested. In Poland, people who are supporting human rights are being arrested, and it's it's 2 hours away from here. Horrible things are happening, and I think it's so important that we're meeting today, and we'll be meeting more to build international queer solidarity, and queers of the world should unite, because this is the time. It's 21st century, 2020, and we all deserve equal rights, human rights, and we will not be silenced. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Eric, and thank you for saying about the snowball effect, because we are as much as we are supporting activists in Poland from here, we also need that feed of solidarity. And so seeing the wave of protests around the UK this weekend and last week and this week, for the first time in other cities in so many places, has been incredible, and I think it's given us a big injection of energy. So it's really, it all really does help. And so we have another question in the Q&A from Anonymous about a book or a film about LGBTQ plus community history that has inspired you. And so I'm just going to give a quick plug to Dan, because Jarek has already mentioned him. So Dan Glass has just published a book, United Queerdom, about the history here, and it's amazing. It's very inspiring. So I'm just going to post a link and hand over to the other panelists to answer that question.
I can give one recommendation. So I definitely also recommend Dan's book, which is really great and shows that, this decade-long evolution of the LGBT plus movement in the UK. And I think there are a lot of lessons that can be transferred to other countries, like lessons learned that he included in that book that might be relevant for other fights that are going on today. One documentary that I would recommend is The Death and Life of Marsha P. Johnson. It's not necessarily, it doesn't have a European context, but it is the story of trans women of color who led the fight in the United States around the Stonewall riots here in New York. And I feel like, you know, that's also a very inspiring story that that can just be very enlightening and relates in many ways to what is happening today. And I can share the link to the trailer here in the notes. I think whoever has access to Netflix should be able to watch this.
I already sent a link, but I'm focused more on interesting researchers, and maybe it will be interesting. This is strategies of surviving queer women from North Caucasus. This is quite a new research where you can find the real stories from girls and transgender people who are living in Chechen Republic, Dagestan, and Ingushetia. It's quite new because I feel that I need to tell something about books or documentary from Russian side. But unfortunately, in Russia, it's quite difficult to publish something about LGBT movement or LGBT community. Yeah, I think this could be interesting.
Tina, would you like to add anything?
No, I wouldn't bring anything from the US or other regions. So unfortunately, I believe in our region, our history is not really written down, and basically it's not written down in English for sure. I mean, in Hungary, we don't have anything that is about the history of our movement. I know in some other countries in Eastern Europe, they have in their local languages, but unfortunately, we don't have too much literature. I think we have historic moments now that will lead to some people writing down the past and the present and hopefully the bright future to stay on the optimistic side.
Thank you. Yes, it's so important as well, you know, being also a representative of the feminist library. We know all too well how precious our histories and underappreciated our histories are. And so yes, very much. There was an event recently which had a big plug for radical archiving, radical queer archiving. So I would encourage anyone who's doing this work in any kind of way, activists, to keep their archives, even though I know that space can be an issue, but we have spaces like the Feminist Library which can accept donations and love to accept donations. Obviously, we're unfortunately closed at the moment, but it's so important that people continue to keep these histories, especially now that, you know, we live in such a digital era that so much of our work is online, and a lot of the time we assume it's safe because it's online, but actually I was listening to something about digitization a few days ago, and I think it said that after 5 or 10 years, only 2% of website content that was there before was still there. It's not to say that the websites disappear, but the content that was there is no longer there because the websites are updated. And so a lot of the content that is not archived just disappears, unfortunately, and we don't, unless we're archivists, we're digital archivists, we don't really think about these things. So please keep your archives. And yes, let's continue this work. We don't have any more questions in the Q&A at the moment, so I just wanted to say, ask. Oh, Jarek wants to say something. Go on, Jarek.
I think I just wanted to add that in terms of archiving in London, at least, we're quite lucky to have another institution, which is the Bishopsgate Institute. They are we've been collaborating with them as part of ACT UP London and part of some of the other like Gay Liberation Front events. They have a specific section of LGBT archives. So we usually donate some of our placards there, some of the t-shirts we make, posters, banners, they're all being kept in the Bishopsgate Institute just opposite the Liverpool Street Station. I'm not sure if they're open to the public right now during the COVID.
Yes,
but look
they
up,
just reopened.
they just reopened. So I think this is one of the really great places which cares for the LGBT community. And you know, I'm quite surprised that UK or I mean London doesn't have an LGBT history museum like the Berlin has Fuller's Museum, right? There is, I think there would be an interesting point to, you know, collaborate and create some sort of maybe cooperation with Bishopsgate Institute to create proper LGBT archives of, and then for them to include the solidarity events and all the materials from the events we're organizing, as well as Polish Rainbow, Farsa, and other groups. So I just wanted to add this, that, you know, there are places, you know, and it's, you know, it's the digital forms are good, but we as a Polish Rainbow, we had this problem at some point. We had some videos put on YouTube of our events and promotional videos, and then at some point our account was just removed and we lost it all. So archiving is important, even in the digital era. You know, having a hard copy of things, it's absolutely essential, you know, to keep the memory of the fight and the fight which continues. So that's all I wanted to say.
Absolutely, thanks, Yarek. We actually collaborate with the Bishopsgate as well, and we're working with them on a digitization project at the moment. So I'm glad you mentioned them. Also, shout out to Metropolitan Archives. They also have an amazing LGBTQ plus collection. And there are centers or projects working on opening up LGBT plus centers in London at the moment. So I'm hoping that there will be a dedicated space, fingers crossed. So since we don't have any more questions from the attendees, I was hoping that we could maybe try and widen the discussion a little bit, because I know that Matthias, you're in New York, and Valentina, you said you're in Ukraine at the moment. So maybe we could talk a little bit more about those contexts a little bit, and then have a final round of comments.
Would you like to start? Should I just go ahead?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So yeah, I'm based here in the US, but to be completely honest, most of my daily work is really outside of the US. Most of the campaigns we currently focus on is a lot of it is actually happening in Europe and Central Asia. We are doing a lot of work in Latin America at the moment as well. But I think what I will say is that these things and these issues that we've been discussing in Poland, in Hungary, in Russia, they are reflected in a lot of developments that are happening around the world, right? I mean, the government we have here in the United States, the government we have in Brazil. I have a lot of colleagues who live in Brazil under President Bolsonaro, who also has been a very loud LGBT enemy. We see similar developments in some African countries and Asian countries. So it's really an issue that has an international layer to it. And I think that is a challenge, but it also is an opportunity, because the things that are happening are you know, so easily to communicate and to get solidarity around, because people understand. Like, you don't have to explain to them what is happening in Hungary, for example. They understand because they have, you know, Americans have the same type of leader that people in Hungary have, or, you know, the structures and the patterns are quite similar. And I think the approach to them can be similar too. And the global solidarity that we've been talking about, that is so important, I think that is the strength, and that is the weapon that that we can use to fight them. As Jarek said earlier, you know, solidarity as a weapon. I really like that as a motto, because that is the only thing that we have, really, right? Like, we like, people power is at the core of what we can do. We can get together, we can talk about things, we can share messages, and we have the numbers, really. You know, it's not just the LGBT plus community itself. It is so many allies around them, that family members, friends, who are supportive of our issues. And I think that is really the strength, and that is what I would say, where as a community our focus should be, to create this global sense of working together on those issues.
Yeah, I'm not sure that, I don't know what to say. I just try to have a break. That's why I came here, because I grew up in Ukraine. And yeah, but what I want to say that when we are talking about solidarity, I think this is a good example. Very often when we move somewhere, when we try to even have a break, we meet with our friends and we have possibility to discuss some issues. And for me, it's very important that the people who are living, I believe that people who are living in the post-Soviet territory, we are more or less in the same conditions. But all of us, we all time can find some unique solution. And I really like to jump in other country and to talk with activists, because usually I can get more ideas and I start to be more motivated. Once we met with a LGBT activist from Ukraine, and we started to discuss something about discrimination law. And my colleagues, they were focused on issue of how to implement law, a good law that they have. And at that moment, I recognized how far I'm from them, because I'm focused on the first step, how to fight with our laws which discriminate LGBT community and LGBT people. And I think that this is very important, to talk with activists with different experience who maybe already receive some results. And at that moment, I start to understand that this is a process. We are just in the way, and I need to be more calm, more to get more information, to make analysis, and to understand that this is not the end. That's why I believe that all these even breaks will be very useful for all of us.
Absolutely. Tina?
I'm not sure what the question is, but I have two thoughts to share. I think it's very important for me to say that coming from Hungary, and also as a trans activist experiencing what I have experienced, we are still very much privileged in Hungary. Society is not much homophobic or transphobic as such. And what we can observe, that we are having similar governments in different countries, and they are kind of doing the same attacks, but rather differently. It's different how Putin is doing it, it's different how Trump is doing in the US, and it's different how Orbán can do in Hungary, and it's so much different how Duda could do this in Poland. That would never work in Hungary, to kind of attack gays. That's just no way to go, and there is not much way to go for Orbán. he still found a way. And I think that's what we also have to do, because probably these governments do have discussions with each other, because we see the same thing is done by them, but in very different ways and in very different moments. So that's what we should also probably do, to talk to each other, do the same thing, but differently. We have to adopt tactics and strategies to our situations. And yes, Valentina, you are just so right. We have beautiful and amazing legislations in Hungary, but they are just not implemented. So it doesn't really help us. And you are struggling for much longer than we do now. So we could learn so much from Russian activists. I'm just so amazed all the time how activists can work under really severe conditions when I'm almost like burnout and dying because of what I'm experiencing, but that's nothing compared to others. So we really have to acknowledge that, I believe. And we are under the same attack, but we have to use the same tactics, but still differently. We have to learn a lot, and we have to grow up for that. And I think in that we also have to look outside of the LGBT movement, because the whole human rights movement and also other movements fighting for climate justice or whatever, or for socioeconomic rights for people, we have to reach out to them, and we have to kind of join forces with them, because we can be alone, but we shouldn't be, because we can fight for the same issues, we can find common grounds. And when the world is so polarized as it is now, I think it is time for us to realize that we don't have to agree on everything. We just have to unite, we have to find the common grounds, and we have to join forces, because these governments really have so much power that we cannot find them any other way. That is what I keep on repeating all the time, because I really believe in that we don't just have to work with LGBT organizations. All of us have to come together and work together, and we also have to support others, because in many countries, like for example in mine, the LGBT movement is in a lot better shape, for example like the Roma rights movement or the women's rights movement still. So we also have to acknowledge that, and we have to support other movements so they can also support us. It's all about coming together at the end.
Thank you so much for that comment. Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, we had a similar conversation when we had our previous event with activists from Romania, and you know, I was struck by all the similarities, but then somebody raised this in the comments or a question, and one of the speakers said a really brilliant thing, which was kind of exactly what you're saying, Tina, is that yes, the situation might be similar, but actually we have to also remember the local specificities, because the other side does not forget them, and they do adjust their strategies, even though yes, they very much communicate on an international level. There are international organizations that fund many of the local organizations. I mean, Ordo Juris in Poland is just one example, and they attack not just women's rights, but also you know, they are the organization, for example, behind the what they call a citizens initiative to ban sex education, because allegedly it's pedophilia according to them. So they're attacking on all fronts. So we very much have to unite, and that's why we're having these discussions. So I think we're drawing slowly to a close. And I would like to invite all the panelists to give a final round of comments, calls to action, anything you'd like to say.
I can say a few words. Yeah, just really also wanted to really quickly react to what Tina just said, that, you know, these governments seem to talk to each other as well, right? And they seem to have some kind of agreement on what is happening to how they're attacking the community. And a lot of this narrative seems to be around tradition and culture and family, right? Like this whole idea that the LGBT community is an ideology that is, you know, it's breaking up, it's trying to break up traditional families. And so we hear this everywhere, right? Like we hear this in Russia, we hear this in Poland at the moment. So this is coming from somewhere. This is coming from organizations that are, you know, trying to perpetuate this kind of narrative. And I think this can be a way for us to break up their strategy by showing that on the opposite, like, you know, the LGBT plus community is not an ideology. It's people, right? It's people with their own stories. And that's kind of like tying back to what I said earlier, that there's so much power in the stories, because many people will tell us, you know, I don't know any LGBT people. I don't know a gay person. I don't know a trans person, but they do. They often don't even know, but they do. They have them in their own families. They have them in their villages, or, you know, they know them, they work with them, and so on. So we have run a few campaigns in the past as All Out, where we captured those stories of, for example, parents, right? We had a campaign in Brazil where we interviewed parents of LGBT plus people who are proud of their children, and who told us stories how proud they are of their daughters and sons. And these stories were just so powerful. We get so much powerful feedback from people who are not at all part of the community, but who heard those stories and who said, I had no idea, but this convinced me that, you know, these parents love their children, and these children should be loved, and they should be members of our society like everyone else. So I think these are, like, you know, this is like the best ammunition we have in this fight against the enemies. Those personal stories that humanize the community, and that show that it's not just some ideology. I think I would like to end on that note, really, to, you know, to connect our stories and to share those stories that we have, and to create the sense of solidarity through the stories of our community members.
I'm months in the end, and I want to say something that is very important for me. I think we really need to understand that we are all different. We have a different experience, we have a different views, and it's very important to give floor for different activists and different initiative groups. Even we think that they're not enough experienced, they're not enough huge, they don't have blah, blah, blah. But in reality, this is our future. And if I can choose, if I can support someone, I really want to support activists from regions. I really want to support activists who just start to do something. And we need to give floor for them. This is very important. And also, what could motivate me, and maybe will motivate you, that situation could be changed very fast. What's going on now in Belarus, I think it's a very good example. And I believe that all world changing even now. But what kind of change, like what kind of world will be in the future? This is a question of our work. If we will continue to do something to make our world better, then we will have a good change in the future. And I want to wish good luck for all of us, and to understand what we are doing and for what we are doing.
Thank you, Valentina. I could continue on what you have said, that I think it's important that all activists are needed. Some of us are protesting and climbing up things and fighting with police, and some of us are working from home, or some of us are doing other things, and all is important. We are all important. Those who are labeled as heroes are just as important as someone just translating something at home. That is the same importance to me, and we have to appreciate each other, and we have to thank each other for that. And we have to be kind to each other. And I really forgot what I actually wanted to say, because I've been just following up on your, oh yes, something that I didn't say today yet, but I all the time say that it's very important to be in solidarity internationally. But for all of us, it's very important to achieve as good situation in our local context as it is possible. For example, somebody from the UK can support trans people in the UK and can make the situation better for LGBT people in the UK, because in as many countries the situation is getting better. This is just more difficult for other governments to go backwards. So it's always very important to not just be careful for others, but also to make the situation better in our local and national context. And these are equally important, and it has to be balanced. And I know it's difficult and we all have to do a lot. I just want to thank you, everyone who attended. I want to thank Matthias and Valentina and Jarek. I have learned a lot from you, and it's been a pleasure for me to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I think Jarek has a last comment as well. Jarek,
thank you. Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, most of you guys said something really very important, profound. I'm so happy I could be part of the event, and I'm really happy that the solidarity, international solidarity, is being built. But I think I wanna end on that note that I've recently watched the amazing TV series from Mrs. America, which talks about the feminist movement in the US around passing the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution. And there's two things which struck me there. One, how much pushback from their own community they had. And we're also, as LGBT people, facing quite a lot of pushback of comfortable LGBT people who kind of like, it seems like it's a middle class people who found their way around the situation. They tell us, you're too loud. They're trying to tell us how to protest. You know, no one will tell us how to fight for our rights. No one in the world ever achieved any change by asking, could you perhaps consider, you know, very gently to give me a little bit of rights? No, with the revolutions changed the world, you know, but the work the activists do on the streets, and that's what Tina said. There are activists on the streets, there are activists behind the on computer screens, there are people who will help us make a placard, there are people who will lobby in the government. So all this is so important. And also intersectional solidarity, because the right-wing movement is fighting on three levels: sexual education, women's rights, and LGBTQ plus rights. And it's been like this over last 50 years plus. And the fight is not over. But what gives me hope is when the Equal Rights Amendment was first put forward, it took 50 plus years for it to be ratified. I mean, it took about 50 years to be ratified all over the US. So we need to be prepared for the long-term fight as well. You know, we need to take some self-care, we need to rest, but we also need to keep the momentum going. So the solidarity between different oppressed groups and different parts of society is crucial. And I've recently spoken to one of the Lithuanian activists and journalists, and we compared notes. And what some of you said, most of the governments in Eastern Europe are using almost the same, and organizations using almost identical tactics. So they have no problem of division. They are not trying to, you know, tell each other, oh, we shouldn't do this, we should do that. They are, you know, they have a united front. So our gay rights, LGBTQ rights, women rights front should also be united. And, you know, what's happening with Black Lives Matter, all those things are connected. You know, all the oppressed groups should come together and fight for solidarity all over the world and fight for equality. So, and thank you very much for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jarek, and thank you so much, everyone. It's such a powerful note to end on, and I just want to add, let's have some fun while we're doing our activism. Somebody's reminded me recently, I think it was Dan as well, in another event that we were both part of, and then last weekend we danced outside of the Polish embassy, and those moments are the moments that keep us going. So let's have a bit of a boogie next time we all have a demonstration, or even dance at home on Zoom next time. Let's see how it goes. Thank you so much, everyone, and keep in touch. Thank you. I want to give us a wave, but I can't because you can't see me. I'm sorry. See you all soon. Keep in touch. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.